Now.
On 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app.
O'Connor and Company.
It's 7:06 on this busy Wednesday morning in your nation's capital. Thanks for tuning in. At 7:35, we'll check in with Nick Minnock, get some updates on some big stories out of Loudoun County, Virginia. Also at 8:05, Chuck Thies. You've heard this story that the Maryland senators are blocking any bill on the RFK Stadium site because they want to grab D.C.'s Air National Guard and incorporate it into the state of Maryland. What is that all about? And what does that mean, by the way, for the Trump administration coming in without the full National Guard complement that they would normally have? All right, we'll get into that with Chuck Thies. And then at 8:35, May Mailman from Independent Women's Law Center about the legal aspects of today's Supreme Court arguments over U.S. versus Skermeti. That's all coming up. It's Larry O'Connor with Julie Gunlock. Good morning, Julie.
Good morning.
It was about 24 hours ago when we saw a real major international drama unfold in Seoul, South Korea, as the president declared martial law, and then the parliament voted unanimously against the martial law. There was some question as to where the military was aligned. It looked like a coup, and everyone here stateside, of course, immediately became an expert on Korean law and Pacific Rim politics. And everyone's trying to sort through who the good guys are, who the bad guys are, who the authoritarians are, and who they aren't, who's aligned with North Korea and the Marxist and who isn't. Maybe Gordon Chang can help us out. He's the author of Plan Red, China's project to destroy America, and he joins us now. Gordon, thank you for helping us out with this.
Well, thank you so much, Larry and Julie.
First of all, I think it should be said that anything that's going on the Korean Peninsula is in some way, either directly or indirectly, going to be connected to Beijing. Am I wrong about that?
You're not wrong about that, because the Chinese view the Koreans as vassals. They've done that for hundreds of years, yes. And they believe that they should control outcomes not only in Pyongyang, but also in Seoul. Now, the Chinese were not involved in the disastrous decision by President Yoon Suk-yeol to declare martial law, but they will take advantage of it.
You say it was disastrous for him politically, it appears also, but what was at the root of it? Why did he suddenly wake up and decide to declare martial law? What's going on in South Korea?
Essentially, there's a deadlock between President Yoon from the conservative camp and the National Assembly, which is controlled by the Democratic Party of Korea, the leftists or progressives. Now, the leftist camp has engaged in a vicious campaign against South Korean democracy for decades. And they were in disarray. But Yoon's declaration of martial law has brought down universal condemnation, and it will, unfortunately, tar the conservatives for a very long time. Yoon probably will be impeached if he doesn't step down before that. There could very well be all sorts of implications, because the Democratic Party of Korea, the leftists, is very pro-North Korean. Their last president, Moon Jae-in, who was the predecessor to Yoon, was essentially a North Korean agent.
Yes, the sunshine policy, he called it, which sounded like acquiescence to the commies.
And how
well,
much... Go ahead, Gordon.
Yeah, it was more than just acquiescence. It was actually active support of North Korea, an active attempt to destroy the alliance that South Korea had with the United States. This was a very difficult period for the U.S. until Yoon became president in 2022.
What was the role of North Korea in sort of getting it to such a point that President Yoon would announce emergency martial law? I mean, what were they doing? Because he seems to have indicated that this was a North Korea operation.
Yeah, that's a great question. And the answer is that North Korea has had great influence in the leftist camp in South Korea, especially through its affiliation with the powerful unions in the South. I'm sure that the North Koreans were instrumental in getting the Democratic Party of Korea and its allies in the National Assembly to essentially block all functions of government. They were threatening to impeach everybody. They didn't have grounds for it. Now, unfortunately, they do have grounds, and Yoon should step down from this. Yeah. But clearly, North Korea will take advantage of the situation.
When you declare martial law, you sort of have to already know if the military is going to go along with it. You can't have martial law without the military. And, of course, the South Korean military operates, trains, does exercises almost shoulder to shoulder with the U.S. military. We still have an impressive presence there. So do we know the disposition of the military? Are they going along with this? Did they indicate that they would go along with this martial law yesterday?
They did in the beginning, following orders. And so the soldiers did surround the National Assembly building. But soldiers allowed legislators to get into the building nonetheless. And those legislators then convened. They had a quorum, and they were able to vote against martial law. Yeah. So question what's going on there. Moon, who I mentioned is the leftist president, previous president, appointed a lot of the generals in the South Korean military. So he probably had some friends on the inside in the last 24 hours.
Gordon, I'm wondering if you can just explain a little bit more. You say the leftists in South Korea's support of North Korea. There is no more brutal dictatorship than North Korea. There is no people more tortured than the North Koreans in the world. What in the world are South Korean politicians doing supporting that regime? I honestly, that's news to me. I didn't understand it was so bad there, but could you explain that a little bit more?
I wish I could explain that, Julie, because to me, like to you and to everybody else, it's just incomprehensible. You know, it basically starts with the issue of nationalism, where people in the South view North Korea not as a menace, which they should, because North Korea's regime is dedicated to destroying the South Korean Republic, but they view them as other Koreans. They view them as destitute Koreans, and they believe that the North Koreans would never harm South Korea, despite all the fact that the Kim regime says, and despite what they did in 1950 when they invaded South Korea. Yeah. So, yes, this is really wrong, and it has been a puzzle to outsiders from the very beginning.
We're speaking with Gordon Chang about the events yesterday in South Korea. I'd missed, if it happened, please correct me, did we hear anything from the Biden administration about this, from the State Department? Was there any official statement with regard to this development?
There was one statement that we had not been informed about the declaration of martial law, which was a correct statement to make.
Well, that on the face of it is kind of strange, isn't it? Considering how reliant South Korea is on the U.S., not just militarily. I mean, you know, we should remind everybody this Korean War is still unresolved. We're in a ceasefire now for close to 70 years, but they rely on our military and rely on our economy. Shouldn't South Korea have notified America when this happened or before this happened? Well,
that is another very difficult question to answer. I mean, you guys are coming up with really hard ones this morning.
Sorry, man.
I'm glad they didn't tell us, because that would have implicated us in something which was deeply unpopular.
Oh, I see.
So in that sense, it's right. Clearly, Yoon did not think out the mechanics of a declaration of martial law. If he had done that, the National Assembly would not have been able to meet. And so this crisis would have been continuing. But he just completely failed on what you do during martial law. And because of that, the National Assembly was able to meet, as I mentioned. They were able to rescind the martial law declaration, which they have the constitutional right to do. And now Yoon will be impeached. So this was a debacle from every different perspective.
All right, Gordon Chang. Follow him on X. It's Gordon G. Chang. And it's always good to speak with you. If we don't before the holidays, have a great one. Merry Christmas to you and your family.
Merry Christmas, Julie and Larry, and thank you so much.